Okay, so we should be live, and you know what we're doing? Every single night here, we're going to get a 2022 fantasy football draft underway. Don't know how you don't know that by now, but also, if somehow you don't know how we're doing this, I'll explain that just in a second. I promise you, I am not a crazy person. We just sent the link out over on Patreon to let all the Patreon flock members get their first shot in here. Let me wait about 30 seconds, then I'll send that link out in the live chat as well for anybody who's coming out to the live stream right away to join. I'll send it out on Discord too for everybody who's in our Discord chat, mainly Patreon people. But nonetheless, let me give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. We got Rigaton is chap coming out. We got Falany, Wesley, Mason, Eaton, the football therapist, Derek, Jackson, Bo, and Adam. Thank you all so much, of course, for supporting the channel. And I think we should have given everybody that's over there on Patreon a chance to join by now. Actually, I'm sorry. The league's already full. I don't think the link's going to be able to get sent out. I'll just put it out in the chat real quick. We got one spot left. If anybody wants to take that, actually, it was just filled. I apologize for that. But, you know, we're going to continue to do these a ton. So don't worry if you're not able to get in this one. You will definitely have more chances to get in, and we'll send out the link to join our next draft as well. Colin asking if this is going to be a Dynasty League. I apologize. No, this is not going to be a Dynasty draft. You know, there's nothing I enjoy more than Dynasty Fantasy Football, and you know we're going to be creating Dynasty content every single day this offseason. However, 100% of that's going to be on the Dynasty Football Flock YouTube channel. I'm not going to be going through and shoving Dynasty content down your throats here because I know most of the people watching this are bums that don't play Dynasty Fantasy Football. I will say it. If you don't play Dynasty, I don't know what I can tell you. There's no better way to play. This channel actually started off as a Dynasty channel back in like 2018, back in the good old days, but we ended up drawing the 104 here. We got Girthquake out in the draft as well. We got some big names out in the draft real quick. Ooh, we forgot to set this up. I apologize. Let me draw this over. But, I mean, y'all can see we have some big names. We got Girthquake. We got Bastro at here as well. We got DBO. We got Luke out. I'm pretty sure Luke has been in every draft we've done this week so far. We got Matt. It looks like we got a lot of regulars here. Do we have anybody new? I apologize if I'm not remembering these names. I believe G-Hawk, TS Scar. I think that Legion has been out here as well. I wonder if this is Paul. I'm unsure if this is Paul. Adele, I believe I've seen this name once or twice before, but we got some big time regulars. And Noah coming out says, more importantly, the flock helping me get bragging rights at work. Happy to hear that you're able to take down the work league, my friend. And now we got Taylor, Derrick Henry going off the board. And you know what I just realized? Crap, we actually drafted at the 104 yesterday, I believe, as well. Yesterday, we ended up taking Christian McCaffrey at the 104, so Najee Harris goes right before us by Bastro. And I think that here we're probably going to, I don't want to do the same thing. We'll try to mix this up just a little bit, see how this goes. We will take Austin Eckler here. I mean, I think Eckler's definitely the safer pick. But as I've mentioned, and I know this is going to be one of the hottest conversation topics in 2022 fantasy football drafts, and it's not even going to be close. It's going to be, is it worth to take the risk by selecting Christian McCaffrey? And I am of the opinion that yes, it is worth the risk. And it's because we all remember Jonathan Taylor's dominance this season. We all remember Derrick Henry's dominance last year. But going back to 2019, the last season, while yes, I know it's a concern with injuries with Christian McCaffrey. Of course it is. But the last season that we saw Christian McCaffrey play fully healthy, he was in a different tier. He was in a different league than Jonathan Taylor. It's crazy to say, but I mean, if you're looking at that season from Christian McCaffrey in a PPR format, he averaged about 30 points per game. 30, like just to give y'all context of where you had Jonathan Taylor this year. Jonathan Taylor was at 23. A 7 points per game difference is massive. I know it doesn't seem like that much because obviously they're both the running back one this year, but just to go through and kind of show you the 7 points per game difference and what that means elsewhere, say if we go through and we look at, I don't know, the difference between, I'm trying to find something good here. Alvin Kamara. So if you remove 7 points per game from Alvin Kamara this season, who, I mean, had his usual season, about 18 points per game, you know the running backs that takes you down to? J.D. McKissick. That is the gap of 7 points. And that was the gap of Christian McCaffrey from 2019 to 2021. So I want to stand by the fact that CMC is a completely fine selection outside of Jonathan Taylor. Really, you have to take Jonathan Taylor, obviously, at 1. But beyond that, I'm willing to roll the dice with Christian McCaffrey. While, yes, he does have a lot of risk, he also has access to a ceiling that we have never seen before from anybody in fantasy football. I know that's a long-winded explanation, but I want to get that out there because I know we're going to be talking about this a ton. And let's go through, send out a poll real quick in the live chat. For whatever reason, if you have not dropped a like on the live stream yet, please make sure you go down there and drop a like on the stream. I can tell we have 10% of the people watching this live stream right now has dropped a like on it. Are y'all kidding me? Are y'all trolling me right now? Okay, so we got that poll out. Okay, Barkley goes at the 204 to the owner that decided to take Cooper Kupp as the first receiver off the board. Jamar Chase goes behind Justin Jefferson. It's really interesting. I mean, from a Dynasty fantasy football perspective, I've had Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 1 this entire season, even after Jamar Chase had his first 200-yard receiving game. And I thought I was a genius for that until Jamar Chase drops 50 points this week. Jamar Chase dropping 50 points, that changes the calculations. I think maybe Jamar Chase has to go ahead of Justin Jefferson in Dynasty, and also maybe has to go ahead of Justin Jefferson in 2022 drafts. But now, if we have an easy selection, we're going to take Antonio Gibson. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because we talk about this in every single draft that we've done. I mean, over the past 2 weeks, it seems like. I know you're tired of it, but nonetheless, to just go in depth a little bit here while we're taking Antonio Gibson over Stephon Diggs is the time of the year that we are drafting. So let me go through and kind of explain to everybody what a best ball format is. If you're not familiar with the best ball format, which this is, of course, a best ball format is a fantasy football draft that's a real money league. This is a real money league, only $5. I'll explain why in a second. But a $5 league, you can do 15, you can do 20. I mean, I was in $250 drafts of the best ball format this year, almost won some serious money in that. But nonetheless, you don't submit your starting lineup throughout the season. At the end of every week, the automatic best starting lineup for you gets submitted. And at the same time, we're drafting 20 rounds here. Players like Laquan Treadwell are going to be getting drafted. So for that reason, you don't need to have waivers, and it's going to save so much time. I did over 200 of these drafts coming into this season. I'm probably going to push over 500 based on the success that we had last year with all these drafts. So you can't have waivers. You can't have to make start-sit decisions, but you have to know the time period that you're drafting. Because before this past season, I'm the guy to go through and take your running back 1 in the first round, take Austin Eckler in the first, but then in the second, third, fourth, fifth, I'm that guy going receiver, 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 and then trying to identify those 0 running back targets later on in the draft that could pop into that running back 2 mold for you. I love the hero running back strategy. However, it's a different time to be drafting right now because right now you need guaranteed touches at the running back position. So even if we are overdrafting Antonio Gibson by taking him here in the second, you are going to see some disgusting draft picks later on. Guys like James Conner going in the 5th round who don't have a contract this upcoming season. So I would rather overdraft a running back here like David Montgomery, where the perfect example is once we get to the season and we know running backs in rounds 8, 9, and 10 that we can go out there and target, I'll feel comfortable to instead take Mark Andrews here and then get running backs later on. Whereas now we don't know those running back targets because players like Leonard Fournette aren't under contract next season. So I know that's an explanation we've given time and time again to why we're taking running back after running back after running back at the top of these drafts right now at this point in the season, before NFL free agency, before the NFL draft. Now, of course, our strategy will change as the offseason progresses. And of course, if you want to go get into these drafts, you can. You can get into them with us on the live stream. We've been doing these every single night. You can go through and get into these. If you're just bored sitting at home on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. and you go, I got an hour to kill, we're watching Netflix, you can go hop in a $5 draft over there on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy, you can find the link down in the description of the video. You can also find it in the comments section as well. And when you use your first deposit, promo code FLOCK, they'll match that first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So please make sure you go support your boy. Make sure you go sign up for an Underdog Fantasy promo code FLOCK. And yes, this is the same website we've been showing those player props off all year with. I'll show those player props off again this weekend for the Week 18 games as well. Paul coming out here says, yep, Legion, the third is the 13th Legion. That's what I thought, my friend. I thought that was you, but I am an idiot when it comes to Roman numerals, so I wasn't quite sure. But yeah, this is going to be Paul. A lot of people know him from the Patreon Dynasty leagues, and he went out there and crushed a couple leagues this season. And yeah, we just got down all those Patreon Dynasty flock winners. We had over 20 Dynasty leagues we ran this offseason. Almost everybody should be paid out. I believe there are 3 leagues that have not been paid out just yet, and those leagues are hosted on LeagueSafe, and the issue is we're waiting on 3 owners to confirm their LeagueSafe names for me. That way I can go through and I can allocate the winnings. If those owners don't get to me by tomorrow, I'm going to go through and I'm going to manually just allocate the winnings to the people who I know they're going to, and we're going to wait for the other people to tell me who I'm supposed to be sending this money to. I just want to get this money off my hands. I want to send it out to y'all ASAP. And I believe there are 3 or 4 stragglers as well in the other 16 leagues that haven't given me their names, but we handled all that through PayPal, Venmo, everything like that. So I was able to get everybody their winnings. And please, if that's not the case, please, for the love of God, if you got first, second, or third, or you scored the most points in the regular season of a Flock Patreon Dynasty League, you have to reach out to me ASAP. Trust me, I would feel very bad if you don't get your money, and I just want to wash my hands of this, and I want to move on. Now, Matt coming out says, good to be in another draft. Lost in the championship of my Dynasty League, but getting Dobbins back, so my stack team is ready for next year. Happy to hear that, my friend. Let's see if we can figure out where Matt is with this draft as well, what he's done so far. Okay, so he is at the 110. He goes Swift, Devontae Adams, and Travis Etienne with the first 3 picks. Devontae Adams, it really does come down. Are we getting Rodgers back? Rodgers comes back, great pick. Devontae Adams at the 103. I was taking Devontae Adams at the, Devontae Adams at the 203. If y'all remember, I was taking Devontae Adams this last offseason at the 103. Yes, we are taking Devontae Adams ahead of so many running backs that were going to get ahead of him in drafts. That's because we were comfortable being able to get Joe Mixon in the second round quite often. And I thought that Devontae Adams had a ceiling floor combination that no other wide receiver could match until, I guess, Cooper Kupp came out here and showed us up. But yeah, we got Mahomes as the first quarterback going in the 4th round. And just a surprise pick off the board. You got A.J. Dillon at the 404. Obviously, you got Aaron Jones under contract next year with a decent amount of guaranteed money. And at the same time, you have Aaron Rodgers uncertain to be back in Green Bay. I'm hoping he's back. I don't want to be coming through and making a lot of Green Bay fans mad at us, but I think A.J. Dillon at the 404 honestly is maybe a little bit too rich. But that's why we're going through, and that's why we're passing up on Stephon Diggs in the second round. And we're, quote-unquote, reaching on Antonio Gibson. That way, instead of having to reach on A.J. Dillon and take A.J. Dillon ahead of T. Higgins, we can just take the wide receiver where the value presents itself. And I believe the value is not at running back anymore. I'm not going to be taking Michael Carter here. Instead, we are going to be going either receiver or an elite level tight end. If you're looking at ADP, Josh Allen is by far and away the best value. I'm not doing it. I would actually rather take a receiver or a tight end here. And you know what? Let's go through and let's take Calvin Ridley. Now, the last draft we did, I believe we took Darren Waller at the end of the 4th. I'll explain why we did not do that in this draft in just a second. Now, Michael Carter does indeed go at the 410, the last running back that was in that tier. I'll explain why we did not decide to take one of those elite level tight ends. Just 1 second. Trust me on this one. Okay, so Blake coming out says, Mason, I'm sorry to keep asking, but I have to. I got a lot of money on the line. Diggs, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Mike Evans, pick 3. Okay, so Mike Evans, assuming that he is healthy, good to go this week, and you don't have Antonio Brown, you don't have Chris Godwin, who the hell are you starting over Mike Evans? Mike Evans may be the wide receiver 1. You're starting Mike Evans. This is a must-win game for Tampa as well, I believe. I could be wrong on that one. Obviously, DK Metcalf with the spike week this past week, I'm going to be a little hesitant to go through and buy into it. We're going to be going with Josh Allen as well with the Buffalo Bills offense. And then I think let me look something up real quick just to confirm. Obviously, week 18 is so weird. And I will say quickly, you should not be playing fantasy football in week 18. You should be done. We shouldn't be playing fantasy football in week 18. Okay. So yes, the Tennessee Titans are playing for something. There's a chance, just a small chance, that the Tennessee Titans get a bye with a win this week. So I actually probably go A.J. Brown there as well. I know that they definitely leaned on Donta Foreman, hook 'em horns over the past 3, but I mean, A.J. Brown clearly has a ceiling that very few other players can match. Okay, Darren Waller goes at the 502. Okay, so this is why we decided to pass on those tight ends previously, because if we were looking at the receivers, I mean, the difference between Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore, there's a strong difference. I definitely prefer grabbing a wide receiver like Calvin Ridley here. He was one of the last guys in that tier, whereas when we were looking at what was between us, we had 6 picks. And let's look at where you are most likely expecting these teams to go. Here we're taking Kyle Pitts. It's going to be an easy selection. Y'all know I hated Kyle Pitts. We were calling him one of the most overdrafted players in the NFL not in the NFL draft, in fantasy drafts this past year when he was going at the end of the 3rd round, the beginning of the 4th. Here, going into year 2, when you're knowing that he's going to be significantly more productive than his rookie season, to get him after that, it's going to be a value. I'm taking Kyle Pitts here in the 5th round every single time. But the reason we decided to take Calvin Ridley instead of Darren Waller or instead of Kyle Pitts, whereas in the draft last night, we did take a tight end here, is if you're looking at the picks between us. So there were these 6 picks, and one team in Bastro here had already taken George Kittle. So we could essentially assume that neither one of these picks were going to be a tight end of Darren Waller or Kyle Pitts. So then there are 4 picks left. But if you were to see one of these teams, say Adele decide to pass on a tight end here, or Girthquake decide to pass on a tight end at the turn, there's a good chance that you had one of them making it back to us, because the only way that we weren't getting one making it back to us, which was definitely a possibility, but it's a risk you have to take in these drafts. Of course, I mean, nothing's ever guaranteed. I mean, is if both owners decided to draft a tight end. We were willing to take that risk. I mean, good thing it worked out for us. So we're getting Kyle Pitts here. And just going back to what we did earlier in this draft, like, are you going to prefer having David Montgomery and Kyle Pitts this upcoming season? Or instead, I mean, if we weren't going to go David Montgomery here, if we didn't want to go a running back, the best value would have been Mark Andrews and Cordell Patterson. Like, definitely you prefer getting the running back in round 3 and the tight end in round 5. This will change once we get to August and we have a better idea of the running back targets later on in the draft. But for now, I'm just hammering it in. If you are hopping into these underdog drafts currently, make sure you're going running back early. It's completely different than the strategy you should have whenever you are drafting in August. And also, just as a quick disclaimer, and I probably shouldn't say this, obviously Underdog Fantasy has been a fantastic sponsor of the channel. I begged them to sponsor the channel a very long time ago. And the reason for that, I love the platform, yada, yada, yada. But do not be getting into high dollar 2022 drafts on Underdog Fantasy right now. If you want to go hop in the high dollar NFL playoff best ball drafts, then hell yeah, go do it. But with these 2022 drafts, only do the $5 drafts. Please hear me out on this, because we are treating this as practice. If you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, if you want to begin thinking about Dynasty Fantasy Football with 2022 projections, and at the same time, you want to prepare for the really fun and big money contest that Underdog Fantasy has halfway through the offseason, that's where this is going to help. That's where this practice coming in, and also not only practice, it's also about having fun, for being completely honest. That's why we've been doing this. But you can accomplish all that with $5. Okay, a $10 draft's not any more fun than a $5 draft. They're the same thing. So please save your money on Underdog Fantasy. Please save that money for the tournaments that they are going to have open up halfway through the offseason, or use that money in the NFL playoff drafts that they have, which we'll be doing some of them on the live stream in probably about, I want to wait until the Sunday games. I want to wait until we know the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. But once we have that clear picture, then we'll be going through and just doing those contests. But when these 2022 drafts are going, wait until you get the big tournaments. Only do the $5 drafts, only get the practice in, only get the fun in, and save your money for those tournaments halfway through the season. Okay, so now you got Michael Thomas going at the 606. Damian Harris at the 607. I actually really like this Kareem Hunt pick. I think that's the latest I've seen Kareem Hunt fall. I would rather have Kareem Hunt over Cordell Patterson this upcoming year. Okay, this is also the latest I've seen James Conner fall as well. I don't necessarily think that James Conner is the guy we're going with. Usually I'm out here clowning on the James Conner selection, given the fact that, I mean, if you're looking at Conner himself, we're going to end up taking Ayuk. With Brandon Ayuk going into year 3, getting him in the end of the 6th round. This is later than where he was going in best ball drafts this last offseason. I'm going to feel comfortable with this selection. But with James Conner, if you knew he was re-signing with Arizona, James Conner would be the best value in the draft at this point. But he signed a deal that I believe had $1.75 million guaranteed this last year. It was a 1-year prove-it contract. And yeah, he proved it, but we've seen before that Arizona is willing to let those running backs walk. They just let Kenyon Drake walk this last offseason for $11 million guaranteed to the Las Vegas Raiders. Who knows what another team's going to be willing to pay James Conner. So instead, we are going to take Brandon Ayuk here. And then we got Cam coming out with a massive donation. Says, won my league, finished the regular season 9-5, but 8th in points in a 12-team league. Final lineup was Josh Allen, Javonte Williams, Rashad Penny, Amara St. Brown, Brandon Cook, Sony Michel, Pat Frymuth. I can't believe I won. Thanks for everything. No, thank you, my friend, for supporting the channel. And this is like the definition of a league-winning lineup in 2021. How many of these players you drafted? You drafted Josh Allen, you drafted Javonte Williams, and you drafted Brandon Cooks? Outside of that, you had 3 players that you actually drafted in this starting lineup. You had Rashad Penny, waiver wire, Amara St. Brown, waiver wire, Sony Michel, waiver wire, Pat Frymuth, waiver wire. That's awesome, my friend. Way to go out there and outwork everyone. Okay, but now let's get our next pick up. And should we go with the elite QB here? I'm not taking James Robinson. If you look at the history of running backs with the torn Achilles, it is just a no bueno type situation. You know what? I'm actually going to probably end up going receiver. Now, I do want to give the disclaimer. If you're getting into the tournament drafts on Underdog Fantasy, they have the playoffs at the end of the year. However, in these private drafts that we are hosting, there are no playoffs, and instead, it's just going to be who can score the most points during the entire season. So players like Robert Woods, players like Chris Godwin, they're going to inherently be worth a little bit less, just given the fact that maybe they missed the first few weeks at the beginning of the year, and missing any time at all is just a devastating blow for these players in a best ball format in particular. But we are going to take Robert Woods here at the 704. This is a wide receiver I was taking at the beginning of the 4th round, pretty much every single draft. I mean, a very common turn that we had in the 3rd, 4th round this past season was Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, which is why those $250 drafts went very well, and Chris Godwin, Robert Woods. Y'all know how much I loved Robert Woods coming into the year, even if Cooper Kupp was that dominant alpha receiver. Jared says, I won 2 of the 4 of my $10 and $5 best ball drafts this year, which I entered because of your promo. Thank you, my man, of course, for supporting the channel and using that promo code, and happy to hear that you were able to come away with the W. Colin coming out says, yo, 2 Dynasty questions for you. Let me know what y'all think of this real quick. I know that we have a lot of people in this live chat over there on the Flock Patreon because we sent this link out on Patreon first. But I was thinking about hosting weekly Dynasty Q&A questions on Patreon and then going through and streaming that on the Dynasty channel. Is that something that y'all would like for me to do? I know that we, of course, every single night stream live Q&A question and answer on the Redraft channel. Dynasty, of course, is going to be a little bit different. Those questions are mainly going to be talking about roster construction, going through talking about trades at the same time. So let me know if y'all would be interested in hosting that. How it would work is very similar to what we did this year on Patreon, where I would just go through, make a Patreon post that says, hey, live streaming right now, please go through and leave any questions you have, and I would just read them in order, giving y'all my answers and giving y'all my explanations. Please let me know what y'all think. Hood coming out says, wow, I thought Joe Burrow would be picked way higher. Insane ceiling. Yeah, I think that Joe Burrow definitely is a quarterback that if you're looking over the past 2 weeks, I'm fine if you want to take Joe Burrow in this range with Justin Herbert. The reason I'm deciding to pass on QB here is I'm actually feeling comfortable about the 3 quarterbacks we can get later on. Now, a big thing in these best ball drafts is if you decide to take a couple of these early quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, keep in mind, you don't have access to the waiver wire, and at the same time, your automatic best starting lineup at the end of the week gets submitted for you. So you really have to change the way you're drafting here, and there you're going to need to get a second quarterback. But the advantage of taking Mahomes in the 4th is you're only going to need to draft 1 more quarterback, and you can do that later on in the draft. Whereas when we're going through and instead loading up with running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, what we're going to end up having to do is we're going to have to take 3 quarterbacks, and hopefully we can cycle through those spike weeks. But based on how fast the other positions fall off currently, I'm actually going to be going through and trying a different strategy out and just drafting 3 quarterbacks late compared to what we were doing previously. And what we were doing previously, we were actually grabbing 2 QBs early. Are we taking Tom Brady here? After all this talk, are we taking Tom Brady? If we weren't, I can't even say who we would go with if we weren't going Brady because we're about to be picking again. Yeah, we're going to take Tom Brady, I guess. We'll take Tom Brady at pick 93. We're going to take him at the 809. I mean, he was right there in that range of what we were looking at previously. We were talking it up as if we were going to go 3 quarterbacks later on, which is something I wanted to try. We did that yesterday and had success. But if Tom Brady's falling to you at pick 93, I think we have to take him. Parker coming out says Mason, our boy Gallup. I know with Michael Gallup, it's devastating. The issue with Michael Gallup, like if you compare him to someone like J.K. Dobbins, I'm not worried at all about J.K. Dobbins coming back next year because he tore his ACL before the season started. But Michael Gallup, I mean, we talked about this in the live stream last night. If you just project a 9-month recovery for him, which is standard with these ACL injuries, he's coming back week 5 next year? As best case scenario, probably not going to be able to work back into the offense at 100% right away. It's a bad situation. Now, Bateman would have been the player we would have gone with if we decided not to take Tom Brady here. Okay, Dallas Goedert, love the pick from Noah here. Let me see what Noah's done so far. Okay, Noah, Josh Allen at quarterback, Taylor, Cordell Patterson, James Conner running back. Oh, no, I'm about to tear into you for the Deebo Samuel pick. I'm about to go through it and talk about that. Okay, so now Foster knew we were between Brady and Bateman. Okay, Jalen Hurts going at the 902. I guess we have been taking Bateman a lot in these drafts, but I mean, he's going in the 9th round. Like, this is where he's going his rookie season. He flashed as a rookie, definitely. I believe Sammy Watkins is not under contract next year either. Okay, so I guess we take Allen Robinson here. I know that, yes, James Robinson technically has a pick of 8. I mean, he has an ADP of pick 70. There's no way in hell I'm taking James Robinson in a format like this. We need players that are actually going to play. If you're going through and looking at the history of that would be just such a bad selection. And obviously, we can't take Antonio Brown anymore. Gallup, we can't take with the torn ACL either. I guess we're going to go Allen Robinson. I will say one thing here. Y'all know I've never been a fan of Courtland Sutton. We've never really been a fan of Jerry Jeudy either at their draft prices. If you get Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, or Deshaun Watson going over to Denver this offseason, Courtland Sutton will be one of the best values of any draft if you're getting him at the end of the 9th, the beginning of the 10th. Y'all know I've been a noted Courtland Sutton hater because, I mean, at his peak, it's so funny. Because he made the Pro Bowl in his 2nd season, everybody thinks that Courtland Sutton at his peak before he tore his ACL was some great wide receiver. But all along he was being overdrafted. He was being overdrafted, overvalued in Dynasty fantasy football. Whereas if you look at a points per game basis, he was a high-end wide receiver 3 that year. The only thing is, he technically, I believe, hit 1,000 receiving yards. It's because he played every single game. I mean, if you're going through and you're looking at a points per game basis, he was a high-end wide receiver 3. Courtland Sutton's never been anything special, but if you're going to be getting him in the 9th, 10th round instead of where you've historically seen him go, and there is the outside chance that he gets the elite quarterback coming into Denver, it's going to be a completely different situation. 3 T Scar coming out says, yo, Mason, how you feeling about my draft so far? Feel like done my best work. Okay, let's go through and let's check out 3DTS. Okay, TS Scar. I apologize. Okay, so let's look at this. I'll remove this camera 1 second. Okay, so this is going to be at the 108. Running back starting off, Joe Mixon getting Tyreek Hill in the middle of the 2nd round. You can't fault anybody for wanting to go with Tyreek. I've been over the tier of running backs like Aaron Jones, Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, obviously, Tyreek is that elite level receiver. Ezekiel Elliott, probably a pick I wouldn't make when we get closer to the season. But like I said, it's better to reach on running backs early at this point of the year rather than reach on running backs late. But Mahomes of the 405, I mean, obviously, it looks like you're paying a premium whenever you're getting guys like Kyler Murray going in the 6th, but I think that it's actually a decent value with Mahomes. I mean, we were laughing at people taking him in the 3rd round last year, but you're getting the stack with Tyreek Hill, and you're getting that at an appropriate price in the 4th, so I'm completely fine with it. Devonta Smith at the 508. You took him ahead of Amari Cooper, Hollywood Brown. I probably wouldn't have gone with Smith. I probably would have gone with a different wide receiver, but it is what it is. They're in the same tier. Kareem Hunt at the 605. Love that pick. That's the furthest I've seen Kareem Hunt fall in a very long time. Cooks at the 708. You took him over Jerry Jeudy, Amara St. Brown. Yep, completely fine with the Brandon Cooks pick. Dawson Knox at the 805. I personally would prefer Dallas Goedert over Dawson Knox, especially if you would have had Dallas Goedert here. And then what you could have done is you could have taken Dallas Goedert and just prayed. It would be very unlikely, but it would have been a possibility that you would have gotten Jalen Hurts falling to you in the 9th, and you could have had the double stack with Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts, and then not have to worry about quarterback the rest of the draft. Of course, we're just talking about ideals here, but I mean, I prefer Dallas Goedert over Dawson Knox in a vacuum anyway. And if also there's the secondary option of possibly getting a double stack in while you're doing so, I think maybe it makes more sense to take Dallas Goedert, but hindsight's 2020. And then Darrell Henderson at the 908. I'm fine with Darrell Henderson at the 908. Obviously, I mean, Courtland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster look like better picks, but it is what it is. You're gonna have to reach on running backs at some point in the draft. And then we have Hugh Anus coming out says, I need those Mason Dodd player prop picks this weekend. My friend, I will say, we actually were in the red on player props after week 13. But to show y'all what we pulled off, I know we already showed this, but y'all know we were going through and we were doing the player prop challenge where we had $1,000 bankroll and we were seeing what we could turn that into on Underdog Fantasy, if we could win money, if we could lose money. Well, you know what we did here? We went out there and crushed it this past week, where we are so far in the green now. We are hovering around, I believe we had lost like $80, $90 in the season. And of course, this is mainly luck, okay? We make our biggest bet of the year and it hits. Our biggest bet of the year. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't think it was a smart bet. I did it to have some fun, okay? At the end of the day, sometimes this is just about having fun. We went through and we bet 170 to win 1,000 on the over on Ayuk, the over on Brandon Cooks, the over on Trey Lance this past week. I got to go out there and flex with y'all because we were losing money up until this past week. But once we hit that one, we actually are in a pretty decent situation. But let's go through and check out where we're going now. At some point, we're going to have to consider taking James Robinson. I mean, if we're talking about the running backs that we're looking at in this range, I think it is whatever. I'm actually probably going to go Noah Fant. Yeah, I think we're going to go Noah Fant here. I know it looks like we're reaching, but we're going to take Noah Fant and we're not going to draft another tight end the rest of the draft. Not because of what Noah Fant did this past week or anything, but just because, Noah Fant, if you're looking at him, the prospect in that 2019 draft class was fantastic. If you're looking historically of what his production through the first 3 years of his NFL career means, he's been a pretty good tight end his rookie, second, and third year so far, considering the fact that these tight ends don't produce early on. So I'm fine drafting Noah Fant. I definitely prefer taking Noah Fant later than guys like Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, just with the outside chance that you probably get, I don't want to say probably, hopefully get an elite upgrade at quarterback this year. Alex coming out says, OMG, Cooks hit by half a yard. A win's a win. Yes, not only did Cooks win by half a yard, but it was in straight up garbage time. The Houston Texans were down by multiple scores, and there was like 40 seconds left in the game, and Brandon Cooks got, I believe, like a 14-yard reception or something to put us over. So it was a pretty nice split. We were watching that game down to the end. And Dylan coming out says, you don't think Akers will come back and take the job? I really hope that Akers comes back and takes the job with how many dynasty leagues I have him in. And I was pessimistic on that based on the historical trends that we have with running backs and torn Achilles. However, a couple good things have happened. A, we're seeing Donta Foreman come back and crush it after his own torn Achilles. And B, more importantly, we have Cam Akers already activated off the IR. So I was going through and earlier when we were doing these drafts and we were seeing people take Cam Akers in the beginning of the third round into the second round. I was saying, you know what? I love me some Cam Akers, but I hate this price point just considering the injury. Well, now that he has gone through and looking like he's going to be able to be good to play at the end of the season, I'm completely fine with that draft pick of Cam Akers now in the third. Okay, so now if we're going to be going through making another selection here, quarterbacks, we don't have a potential stack. Taking a running back, we're actually going to go Gus Edwards. The thing is, are they going to give Gus Edwards the job? Obviously, the secondary job. If we're going to take Gus Edwards, Edwards isn't a running back that we've taken before. I don't like the pick. We're definitely overdrafting him if you're comparing him to someone like Ryan Tannehill, if you're comparing him to someone like Kenny Golladay. However, like we say, all these running back picks are going to look gross. You're going to have to pick your spots where you're overdrafting your running backs. Those spots that we picked so far to overdraft our running backs have been the first, second, and third rounds. Maybe, yes, it is overdrafting Antonio Gibson, taking him over Stephon Diggs. Yes, it's overdrafting David Montgomery to take him over Mark Andrews. Yes, it's probably overdrafting Gus Edwards to take him over Tannehill, but it's allowing us to avoid the dead zone at running backs where we really don't want to be the person having to come out and let's tear into Girthquake here for a little bit. We don't want to have to be the person coming out and taking Cordell Patterson over Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller. I don't want to have to take Cordell Patterson over Darren Waller because we passed on running backs early. Okay, so Dylan coming out says, how many drafts are we doing tonight? Y'all know back coming into the season, we were going through and we were doing like 4 or 5 drafts a night. Like we were going crazy. We were live streaming over 4 hours pretty much every single night, all these drafts. And I'll be doing that again coming into 2022 because I had so much fun with that this past year. But I've live streamed pretty much every single night over the past 6 months for hours on hours on hours and have made an unspeakable amount of videos. not going to lie with y'all. I'm a little bit tired at this point. We need to sleep, so we're probably only going to get one draft going tonight, but I'll make sure that we definitely get another draft going tomorrow for y'all. Okay, so Moose coming out says, will Akers be coming back playoffs or next season? I think it's a possibility he comes back in the playoffs. Now, the report coming out of Sean McVay in Los Angeles this past week was saying that Cam Akers, to be honest, wasn't close to returning this week, but who the hell knows what that means? I mean, they activated him for a reason. I think that this is obviously to make it to the playoffs. And if Akers is good to go in 2 weeks, he'll probably be active. Now, I would be extremely surprised if they go out there and they give Cam Akers, say, more than 15 touches. I would imagine that it's actually going to be a split, I guess, between all three running backs now because they're already splitting Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel. I'd imagine that Akers is back based on him coming off the IR, and they actually look to split the backfield between the running backs. Okay, so you got Golladay at the 11-10, Gallup at the 11-12. Obviously, this is a massive value with Michael Gallup, and I would have taken Michael Gallup ahead of Gus Edwards, and this was a draft where we had the fantasy football playoffs. However, with us not having the playoffs here, the strategy is a little bit more different, and the strategy is just get as many points as you can at the beginning of the season. You can't just load them up for the end of the year. And yes, Gus Edwards has the same exact injury as Michael Gallup. The difference is, if you're looking at the time frame, Gus Edwards had his before the season started, where Gallup just had his. Okay. Triple T-Scar says, isn't it not certain that Cousins comes back to Minnesota? I don't. The thing is, if Minnesota's going to replace Kirk Cousins, who are they going for? Like, we just saw what Minnesota looked like without Cousins this past week, and this draft class is not fantastic at the quarterback position by any means. So I don't know. I would, if I was a betting man, I would go through and I'd bet pretty much every penny I owned that you have Kirk Cousins back in Minnesota. Okay. So let's switch this back over really quick. Got Tua, Julio, Derek Carr, Hunter Henry. Okay, I actually really like one of these picks. So we can't take tight end. We already have our two guys, and we took them early enough where if we were going to get a third tight end, which I'm not saying we're drafting, we're most likely not drafting a third. It wouldn't be until the very end of the draft. Okay, so there are two players that I really like here. We definitely have to come away with a starting quarterback out of this turn. Just looking at the teams between us, there's not a single team with two quarterbacks. So we simply have to take Tua Tagovailoa. There's another player that I like, but the issue is, I mean, there are going to be multiple quarterbacks selected here. Bastro has Joe Burrow, Adele has Jalen Hurts, and Girthquake has Josh Allen. Like, the guaranteed starting quarterbacks are drying up, and they're going to be gone pretty damn fast. So you're going to see a lot of these guys go off the board. Devontae Parker by Bastro. This was actually the wide receiver that we were looking at taking if I did not take Tua Tagovailoa. I love that Devontae Parker pick. Yeah, that was the guy that we were looking at. Just the issue is I would be willing to bet a house that you have a couple quarterbacks coming off at the turn here. You got Derek Carr at the 12-11. And that's why we only had Tom Brady. We can't be in a situation where we are just scrambling with Tom Brady and then Daniel Jones at the end of the draft. That would just pretty much be us punting our draft away. Okay. So, yeah, you got Mac Jones going at the 12-12. Let me know, would you prefer Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa this next season? I think actually Mac Jones may be the better value, considering the fact that if you're looking at Mac Jones, there's no chance in hell that he's not starting for the New England Patriots, where there is the outside chance that you do get Tua replaced by Deshaun Watson. I know they're just rumors, but still, even if you only associate, say, a 10% chance of that happening, then hell, I mean, that's probably enough to possibly just go with Mac Jones instead. Golf for Life says, Mason, are you going to do the Gauntlet Underdog Playoff Challenge? Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing those. We've done some of those drafts on the live streams before. I kind of want to wait a week, and I want to wait until we actually have the set playoff bracket, and it's going to be a lot easier for us to knock a ton of those out. Matt coming out says thoughts on the team so far. Feel decent about it. Okay, we will definitely go through and we will check that out as soon as we get our next selection in. Like I said, I mean, Hunter Henry, a fine value. The issue is we can't take another tight end. We already have our guys. And if I'm smart enough, we can click some buttons here, figure this out. Okay. I think we end up going receiver. There's a good chance that Laviska Shenault's just dead. There is a very real chance. I want to get that out here because if you're looking at Laviska Shenault, he's going to go into year 3 of his NFL career and be on his 3rd coaching staff. Like old Mason Dodd back in like 2015 Dynasty days, I would have gone through and I would have been like, oh, the talent's there. We've seen it. We know it. Who cares? Who cares? Let's go. Let's buy low. I mean, I've seen my talented players. I've seen my fair share of talented players just flame out given horrible situations early on in their NFL careers, and they're never really able to overcome it. They're really never able to get a fair shot later on. I'm afraid Laviska Shenault can be that player. I liked him coming into the season. I definitely am not drafting him where I was coming into the year in this draft, but instead we're taking him after guys like Russell Gage, Kendrick Bourne, and Antonio Brown. I don't know if Antonio Brown was an auto pick here, but dear God. Okay. So let's go through and let's check out Matt's team really quickly. This is going to be at the 110. And here, DeAndre Swift in the first, Davante Adams in the second. As I discussed, I think with this Davante Adams selection, it really just does come down to, are you getting Aaron Rodgers coming back? You know how much I love Davante Adams this past year. I actually probably would, at this point, just take Tyreek Hill over Davante Adams, because I would say that if you have Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay, Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams are most likely going to be in the same tier regardless. I would definitely have Davante Adams ranked ahead of Tyreek Hill, but they would be in the same tier. Whereas if Aaron Rodgers is no longer in Green Bay and you're looking at Jordan Howard, then, I mean, Tyreek Hill is going to be in a completely different tier than Davante Adams. So right now, I would probably take Tyreek ahead of Adams. Travis Etienne at the 310, going to be completely fine with that pick. At the 403, Keenan Allen. Love the Keenan Allen selection. Amari Cooper at the 510. Feeling good about that. If we were going to go anywhere else, it'd be Miles Sanders. But, I mean, I've taken Amari Cooper in the same exact range. Justin Herbert at the 603. Who did Justin Herbert? Okay, thank God. For a second, I thought you took Justin Herbert ahead of Kyler and Lamar, which I would not have agreed with. We've definitely seen it before, however, like Justin Herbert here. Stevenson at the 710. Rashad Penny. So is Rashad Penny really going to be going in this range for drafts next year? Because last draft, I actually saw this and was like, hey, you know what? It definitely rich to take Rashad Penny ahead of Chase Claypool, ahead of Odell, ahead of Rashad Bateman, ahead of Deshaun Watson, ahead of Tom Brady. This is back-to-back drafts that I've seen this happen. But if we were to go through and say, who's giving us more points? The combination of Saquon Barkley, who you could have selected in the second round, and Chase Claypool, who you could have selected in the 8th, or Davante Adams and Rashad Penny. I'd love to know your opinion on that. I mean, you know that I've been a massive Rashad Penny fan since 2018. I think that he has all the talent in the world. It's just the issue, he's never been able to stay healthy in the NFL. I don't necessarily think a 3-game stretch changes that. Sutton at the 9-10. If he gets a change in quarterback, fantastic. Pat Freiermuth at the 10:03. Maybe I am just a little bit too biased based on thinking Noah Fant was a better talent going into the NFL draft. But I really think I would still prefer to having Noah Fant over Pat Freiermuth. And another tiebreaker maybe you could look at is if you took Courtland Sutton here, you're already essentially banking on Denver being able to get an upgrade at the quarterback position. If that does happen, then Noah Fant would also get the boost. So you're kind of creating just a little mini stack there. Galladay at the 11-10. Hated Galladay in drafts this past year, but at the 11-10, that's fantastic value. J.D. McKissic at the 12-03. Fine with the value. The issue is with J.D. McKissic. Well, yes, you love J.D. McKissic. You love Naheem Hines type running backs in best ball formats. You don't like them in regular leagues, but in best ball formats, you don't have to predict when the spike week's coming, so you like it. The issue is J.D. McKissic's not under contract this next year. Marvin Jones at the 13-10. It is what it is. Keel Herbert at the 14-03. It's fine as well. I mean, we're getting to the point where KJ Osborne is going. I don't think I can critique anybody's selection there. I don't think I can do it too hard. Okay, so now let's pull up what we're going to have. Okay, Carson Wentz at the 14-06. I was about to ask, did something happen with Carson Wentz that I do not know about? Okay. So Debo. And I'll say real quick, we can say this because I believe we're in the clear. Actually, wait one sec. No, we may not be out of the woods just yet. McCole Hardman before us. Okay, so. Will this be our first selection this year of Raheem Mostert? Usually Mostert's going a round or two before this. Let's just take him. Who the hell cares? Well, it's the 14th round. Other running backs that we're going to be looking at just simply have no shot at ever being a starting running back for their own offense. I believe we took Trey Sermon ahead of Raheem Mostert in last night's draft. They're very close to me. I think they're essentially the same guy. You got Marquez Callaway at the 14-10. Matt says, I'm a big Hawks fan, so it's kind of me rooting for Rashad Penny. Trust me, my man, I want to root for Rashad Penny as well. I really do. Joshua Palmer at the 14-11. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be working out to us. I mean, in our favor. Okay, so running back-wise, we have 5 guys so far. Okay, so I can tell y'all how this build is going to be. We're going to be taking 3 quarterbacks with this team. We're going to be taking 6 running backs, 2 tight ends, and the rest of the draft will be receiver. Please understand that if you're drafting these best ball formats, there's almost nothing that matters more than the roster construction in terms of how many quarterbacks, how many running backs, how many receivers, and how many tight ends you are drafting. Understand that's the number one priority for you to get right when you enter in these drafts. Okay, so now Adele going with this selection, 2 picks before us, already gets 7 wide receivers. I'm going to imagine, they go Dan Arnold. I mean, they only had Darren Waller. It was kind of clear that they were going to go tight end. Maybe Bastro decides to go Robert Tonyan here. He goes Sterling Shepard. That's a little interesting, but I think we have an easy selection. So we are planning on taking 3 quarterbacks whenever we wait so long at our second guy into Tagovailoa. I mean, we have selected quarterbacks at pick 93 and pick 141. I think that's a low enough investment, especially if our third guy is going to be in pick 170 range, where we can take 3 onto this build and just look for the spike weeks. Obviously, we don't have to predict them. They'll just randomly slide in. And I'll really like taking Matt Ryan on this team, because if you're looking at some stack options that we have Calvin Ridley as our wide receiver 1, and we also have Kyle Pitts. So the second that we go through and the second that we take Kyle Pitts after Calvin Ridley, I mean, I'm telling you, my initial thought is we got to get Matt Ryan on this roster. And of course, it's something I don't want to say on the live stream because I don't want to get sniped, but it's going to be happening. Okay, so Adam coming out says, hey, man, can you check the Flock 20 chat? Yes, sir. Definitely will check that. Check that right now, and I'm going to check that. I was going to check all those chats as well right after the live stream. Okay, so that is no bueno. Okay. Thank you, my friend, for letting me know this, and I'll be happy to get this fixed. Okay, so you know what? This is a big enough deal. Looks like I sent $300 to the wrong person. Someone reached out. Adam let us know that he did not win the league, but I accidentally sent him $300 anyway. Kind of got to fix this. Okay, so we are going to probably in the draft here. You already got players like Nelson Aguilar, Trey Sermon, Cole Beasley already going off the board. So I think this is far enough to call it. Let me go through and show you all the entire draft. But of course, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Get into our next draft. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up. Get your first deposit matched dollar for dollar up to $100. Let's go through, scroll down this list. And I believe that should be it. You can find the link to join our next one in the description in the comment section. Thank y'all. Hope you have a great day. Hope we get to see you in the live stream tomorrow. And for the love of God, everybody, prayers up that I fix this situation and get everything going.